The reason you feel guilty right now has almost nothing to do with something you actually did wrong. Sit with that for a second, because if you're like most people watching this, you carry a low-grade hum of guilt everywhere you go. Guilt about not calling back fast enough, guilt about saying no, guilt about wanting something for yourself instead of handing it to someone who asked with the right tone of voice. And you've been treating that guilt like a compass, like it's pointing you toward being a better person. It's not. It's a leash. And someone else is holding the other end. Carl Jung wrote about guilt in ways that most people have never been exposed to, because the version of Jung you get in pop psychology has been sanded down, made palatable, stripped of everything dangerous. What he actually said about guilt would make most therapists shift in their chairs, because Jung didn't see guilt as a sign of moral sensitivity. He saw it in many cases as evidence that an external authority had colonized the inside of your mind so completely that you now police yourself on their behalf. You became your own prison guard, and you don't even charge rent. If this channel has earned your attention before, or if it's earning it right now, then subscribing is just pattern recognition. This is where the information lives that other channels won't put on camera. Hit subscribe, and we continue. Now let me show you how the machinery actually works. There are two kinds of guilt. The first kind is real. It's the signal that fires when you have genuinely violated your own code. Not someone else's code projected onto you, not society's code that you swallowed without chewing, but yours. You stole something. You lied to someone who trusted you. You broke a promise that mattered. That guilt is clean. It arrives, it tells you what happened, and it has a clear resolution. Make it right or carry the weight. That kind of guilt is rare. Most people feel it a handful of times in their lives, and when they do, they know exactly what it's about. The second kind of guilt is the one running your life. This is manufactured guilt. Guilt that was installed in you before you had the language to refuse it. Jung called the mechanism behind this the superego in his earlier Freudian phase, but as his work matured, he identified something far more precise. He talked about the internalized collective voice, the chorus of expectations from parents, institutions, religious systems, and social hierarchies that takes root so deep inside a person's psyche that it becomes indistinguishable from their own conscience. You think you feel bad because you did something wrong. In reality, you feel bad because you did something unauthorized. There's a difference between those two things that most people will never see, and that blindness is not an accident. It's the entire point. The system works because you can't tell the difference between your own moral signal and someone else's control mechanism firing inside your chest. Let me make this concrete. Think about the last time you felt guilty. Not a big dramatic guilt, a small one. The kind that barely registers but still changes your behavior. Maybe you didn't answer a text fast enough and felt that little pang. Maybe you spent money on yourself and felt a flicker of something like shame. Maybe someone asked you for a favor and you said no, and even though you had every right to say no, even though saying yes would have cost you something real, you still felt that weight settle in. Now ask yourself a question you've probably never asked. Who benefits from that guilt? Not you. You gained nothing from it. The guilt didn't make your decision better. It didn't clarify anything. It just made you uncomfortable enough that next time you'll probably say yes. Next time you'll respond faster. Next time you'll put your own needs second without even being asked, because the guilt trained you to pre-comply. That is what control looks like when it doesn't need to use force. Jung described the shadow as the repository of everything a person has been taught to reject about themselves. But here's what gets left out of every Instagram infographic about shadow work. The shadow isn't just filled with your dark impulses. It's filled with your legitimate desires, your authentic no, your real boundaries, and every act of self-preservation you were punished for as a child. The shadow doesn't just hold your monsters. It holds your spine. And guilt is the emotion that keeps you from reaching in and pulling it out. Every time you feel guilty for prioritizing yourself, that's not your conscience. That's a program. It was written by whoever first made you feel that your needs were an inconvenience. A parent who sighed when you asked for something. A family system where love was conditional on compliance. A religion that framed self-denial as virtue and self-interest as sin. A culture that tells men, specifically, that their worth is measured entirely by what they provide, and that wanting something back makes them selfish. You didn't write that code, but you execute it every single day. Here is where it gets darker, and I need you to stay with me, because this next part is the thing nobody says out loud. The people who benefit most from your guilt are rarely evil. They're not sitting in a room scheming. Most of them genuinely believe they are good people, and that's what makes the mechanism almost impossible to fight. Your mother who guilts you for not calling enough doesn't think she's manipulating you. She thinks she loves you, and you're being neglectful. Your partner who makes you feel guilty for spending time on your own ambitions doesn't think they're controlling. They think they're expressing a need. Your friend who lays a guilt trip on you for setting a boundary doesn't see it as coercion. They see it as honesty about their feelings. The most effective form of control is the kind that the controller doesn't even recognize as control. Jung understood this at a level that was almost terrifying. He wrote about how entire civilizations maintain order not through laws and punishment alone, but through the cultivation of guilt as an internal enforcement mechanism. You don't need a police officer on every corner if every citizen has a judge inside their skull who never sleeps, never takes a day off, and never questions whose laws it's enforcing. That judge was placed there before you could consent to it. Now I'm going to flip something on you, and it might sting. Some of you watching this are not just the victims of guilt manipulation. You're also practitioners of it. You've used guilt on other people. You've given someone the silent treatment to make them feel bad for a choice that was perfectly within their rights. You've said, "It's fine," in a tone that made it clear it was not fine, specifically so the other person would feel the squeeze. You framed your disappointment in a way designed to make someone else carry the weight of your emotional state. Guilt doesn't just flow downhill, it circulates. And the people most susceptible to guilt manipulation are also the ones most likely to deploy it on others, because it's the only tool they were ever given. When you grow up in a system where guilt is the primary currency of social control, you spend it as fluently as you receive it. Recognizing that isn't comfortable, but it's the price of actually seeing the board clearly. Let me take you somewhere even more uncomfortable. Jung proposed that neurosis, and guilt-driven neurosis in particular, comes from the refusal to accept what he called the moral problem of opposites. In plain language, it means this: you are not all good. You are not supposed to be all good. The expectation that you should be selfless, accommodating, agreeable, and perpetually available is not a moral standard. It is a cage designed to produce a person who is easy to manage. The guilt you feel when you act in your own interest is not evidence that you are selfish. It is evidence that someone at some point needed you to believe that self-interest is a sin. Because as long as you believe that, you will keep giving yourself away, and someone will keep collecting what you give. Jung's concept of individuation, the process of becoming a psychologically whole person, requires what he called the integration of the shadow. But here's the part that gets sanitized out of every pop psychology summary. Integration doesn't mean acknowledging your shadow exists and then being nice about it. It means acting on it. It means saying no and letting the guilt come and not flinching. It means watching someone's disappointment in you and not rushing to fix it. It means sitting with the discomfort of being seen as selfish by people who were profiting from your compliance. That is the hardest thing a person can do, not because the action is difficult, but because the guilt is so loud it feels like proof of wrongdoing. Let me tell you something about the people who actually operate with power in this world. Not the loud ones, not the ones performing dominance, the quiet ones, the ones who seem unreachable. Watch them closely and you'll notice something specific. They do not apologize for existing. They do not preemptively manage other people's emotions. They do not carry guilt as a baseline state. And this doesn't make them cruel. In fact, many of them are deeply generous. But their generosity comes from choice, not from compulsion. They give because they want to, not because they'll feel guilty if they don't. That distinction changes everything. Generosity from choice is power. Generosity from guilt is servitude with a pleasant mask. And here is the operational truth buried at the center of all of this. You cannot stop someone from trying to make you feel guilty. That is their move, and they will keep making it. What you can do is break the link between their move and your response. Guilt is a feeling. It is not a verdict. It is not evidence of wrongdoing. It is a sensation in your chest, a thought pattern in your head, and it was conditioned into you so early that it feels like the voice of God. It is not the voice of God. It is the voice of whoever needed you obedient when you were too young to fight back. The next time you feel that familiar pang, someone is disappointed, someone is hurt, someone is making it clear that your choice has caused them suffering. I want you to do something radical. Nothing. Don't apologize. Don't explain. Don't rush to fix. Just let the guilt exist without acting on it. Let it sit there like a bad roommate you've decided to stop accommodating. You will feel terrible. That's the point. The feeling of terribleness is the system fighting to maintain its grip. It's the program running its last-ditch protocol. And if you can sit through it, not once, but repeatedly, something happens that Jung described, but most modern psychologists won't touch. The guilt begins to lose its authority. Not because you've suppressed it, not because you've rationalized it away, but because you've stopped obeying it. And the moment you stop obeying an authority, you see it for what it actually is. Not a moral compass, not a conscience. A leash held by a hand that may not even be attached to a living person anymore. Some of you are obeying the guilt installed by people who are dead, people who cannot be pleased, cannot be satisfied, cannot even witness your compliance. And still you comply. Jung would call this possession by an archetype. The voice of the devouring mother, the voice of the critical father, the voice of the collective that says, who are you to want something for yourself? These voices don't need living speakers. They took up residence in your psyche decades ago, and they've been issuing orders ever since. The person who feels guilty all the time is not a good person. They are in occupied territory, and the occupation will not end because you've read about it. It will not end because you've recognized the pattern intellectually. It ends when you start making choices that trigger the guilt and then refusing to reverse those choices. It ends through action, through repetition, and through the willingness to be seen as the villain in someone else's story. Because here's the final piece, the one that most people will not accept. If you stop being controllable through guilt, some people will leave your life. Not because you've become a bad person, but because you've stopped being a useful one. Relationships built on guilt compliance do not survive the removal of guilt. And when those relationships collapse, the guilt will surge harder than ever, screaming at you that you've made a terrible mistake, that you're abandoning people who need you, that you're cold, that you're wrong. That surge is not the truth. That surge is the system's last defense. The people who remain after the guilt loses its power. Those are the ones who actually wanted you, not what your obedience provided them. That is a small number. It has always been a small number, and knowing that number is worth more than every comfortable lie guilt ever told you. Jung said it plainly. The most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely. He wasn't talking about self-love in the way that word gets thrown around now. He was talking about accepting that you are an organism with desires, boundaries, and a finite amount of time, and that you are under no obligation to feel bad about any of it. Guilt is not your conscience. It's someone else's hand on your steering wheel. And the only question that matters is whether you're going to keep letting them drive.